How long will my stroke recovery continue? This is probably the second most common question that I hear in my day-to-day practice, just visiting people at home to help with or direct their stroke rehab programme. And secondary to that question really is, underneath it, is it too late to start? In the UK, at the time of going live with this, the people that come to me for help are telling me that they're advised that their recovery will happen generally in the first 6 months, maximum. The only reasoning that I can find for this is that is about the length of time that the NHS will support their recovery. Little story about this. For a number of years I worked in a small southern African country, then Swaziland, now Eswatini. People came to our hospital in the capital from all over the place. One day a man I'll call Robert arrived for treatment for the largest pressure sore I have ever seen. It covered the whole of his sacral area, at least 20 centimetres, 8 inches in old money across, and 3 to 5 centimetres deep in some places. That's 1.5 inches. He'd had a stroke about 7 years previously. He lived at home, cared for as best they could by his family, fed and watered, laying on his back on an iron bedstead with a thin coir coconut matting mattress, because the family believed that he'd angered his ancestors and was being punished for that. It simply did not compute to go against their plan for him. So he never attempted rehab until he came into the hospital. And somehow they had kept his, most importantly, ankle joint working. So he was gradually able to learn standing and then some walking. His sore was treated by nursing him laid flat on his stomach and filling the wound with ordinary white table sugar taken from the hospital canteen, and that repeated every couple of days. I think from memory it was about 3 months he stayed with us. I went with him when he went home. We got a bus that dropped us in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road and walked to a mud hut up the hillside, about 100 metres or so from the road. Inside was the, now in our world at least at the time, legendary bed. Lots of family were there to greet him, and it was a joyous occasion. I spoke the language pretty well, so I did gather they were fascinated to find out what Robert had done to finally appease the ancestors. From my angle, his rehab was actually pretty basic. I had one assistant, and I was the only physio in a 300+ bed hospital. In one sense, he presented to us as a blank slate. But the passage of time was not the relevant thing. It was simply what he'd been doing with it. And this changed when he arrived at the hospital. For the record, in case anybody thinks that I'm patronising that family for their beliefs, I'm not. I think it's a pretty good test of my behaviour to ask of it, what would my grandma have thought of that? And why don't I do this instead? Although my own belief is that my grandma, who, by the way, starred posthumously in my Stroke Stories video recently, has limited power to punish me in this life. I saw Robert 3 months or so later when he came back to clinic at the main hospital. I'm glad to say he looked like he was doing pretty well and walking confidently with a long stick. My second story is a current one. How long will my recovery continue? I'm currently working with someone who had their stroke about 4 years ago, and I've been working with them for about 3.5 years. And we've worked together quite steadily since then, although there was maybe 9 months or so interruption by the COVID pandemic. We did our best to keep muscles in good condition using things like electrical muscle stimulation or trophic stimulation. So we did those things, and the recovery of his hand movement has only just started, really in the last 15 months. We've used those electrical gadgets and we've used Sabo glove. That didn't work so well. Somebody living alone didn't work in that situation. But I think it's a pretty good product, by the way. He's now walking almost limp-free, and that's only come in the last year. Before the limping was really quite marked. So under no circumstances do you give up. If you do, you probably will find that progress is limited. And one of the main reasons for pursuing this man's arm recovery is that the arm, shoulder and hand all have a role to play in balance. So it's important, even if a usable hand action or functional hand, even if that's not the goal, still working on maybe the vestiges of shoulder movement are still going to be an important component for balance. And certainly in this case, I remain convinced that that's the case. He's beginning to be able to use trunk and shoulder to counterbalance the swing of the opposite leg. So do keep going. 4 years, I'm looking forward to the next 4 years with this man. Let's see where it can go. Do please like and subscribe to the channel. It does help to keep things ticking over, and we all need a little bit of encouragement at times, myself included. If we can keep the channel going and keep putting out some useful information, then that's a good thing. I also value your comments. It's good to hear your stories, but also the hard thing to come by is criticism. So do tell me what I'm doing wrong, do tell me what I'm not doing wrong when it comes to broadcasting this kind of information. Thanks for watching.